The first thing I'm going to do is take you through the most important buttons on the camera body. The first is the shutter button. This is a two-phase button, meaning that the button has two positions. The first is a halfway depression, and the second is a full depression, which will actually take the picture. You need to train your finger to feel where that first depression point is. It's a very soft click when you push down. It's almost like you're just breaking through a stress point or something. And then if you were to push it down all the way, it'll take the picture. You need to train your finger to feel the sensitivity between these two positions. The second most important external button is the main selection dial. I also call this your primary selector. It's located directly above the shutter button, and you will notice that it rotates to the left or right. The third most important selector is on the back of the camera. It has a little AV and a plus minus sign next to it. This is your exposure compensation button. It is critically important that you are aware of this button and what it does. The next most important dial, I would say, is the mode dial. This allows you to control which mode you're shooting in, whether it is a basic mode where the camera is going to have a lot of the automatic settings done for you, or if it's a creative mode. These are the modes where you're going to tell the camera what to do. Out of all the buttons on the camera, you're going to use these four more than anything. I promise you that. Let's look at some of the other secondary buttons on the camera so you know what they are and what they do. If you look on the opposite side of the shutter button, that side of the lens, if you look halfway down, there's going to be an oval button. That oval button is your lens release button. You're going to push this down every time you rotate a lens on or off of the housing. Below that is your depth of field preview. We'll go into this a little bit more later, but it allows you to see your depth of field through your viewfinder in real time. The button directly above the lens release in the depth of field preview is the force flash button. This button is useful if you ever wish to force your flash to fire. Let's finish the top of the camera. Right behind the primary selector wheel, we have a button that says ISO, and that is your ISO selector button. This is a new button on the XSI and will allow you to change your ISO easily without being confused. You're going to use this button quite a bit. We have our on-off switch, obviously, pretty good one to know. And then if we look on the back of the camera, we have several buttons, and it's really not that bad. The menu button is a very important button, and you are going to be using it often. This will allow you to access the menu of the camera and tweak the settings of the camera from there. I have a whole portion of this video dedicated to the menu, but it's set up for you to know exactly what you're doing, and hopefully will save you some time. The display button, just off to the right of the menu button, will allow you to power the display on or off. You know, if you're trying to save batteries or whatever, you're just going to push that, and if you want to see your display, you push that in, it'll pop your display back up. Just off to the bottom right of the LCD monitor, we have our playback button. And you're going to be using this button quite a bit because every time you take a picture, if you want to see how it turned out, you will press the play button and the image will be shown on your LCD monitor. Just to the right of the play button, we have the delete button. It has this little garbage can icon next to it, and that'll allow you to delete images if you want. Now above these two buttons, we have 5 buttons, and I call this the directional pad selector, because you'll notice that there are these little arrows on each of them. And this will allow you to do things such as move through the menus, or when you're looking at a picture to move, to zoom in and move around in the picture. And it's a pretty intuitive, easy thing to use. Now you will also notice that there are these little icons next to each of these buttons. And these buttons act as a way to manipulate your settings of the camera. I'm going to show you how to do this when we go through the LCD monitor portion of the video. But to quickly name them, the top button is your metering mode button. The right button is the autofocus mode. The bottom button is your picture styles button. And the far left button is your shooting drive mode. The middle button, the set button, is really a select button. Above the directional pad selectors, we have another button that has two little icons next to it. One is WB. That's the one you really need to know. That's your white balance, and it'll allow you to select your white balance on your LCD monitor. The little blue icon you see refers to the print order or the transfer order. If you are looking to print directly from the camera or transfer directly from the camera, this button is going to allow you to do this. I really think you should just invest in a flashcard reader and take the card out and just use that. But this feature is there if you need it. I don't cover it in this video because it just doesn't, I think it's an obsolete feature. The last two buttons are also super important. The far right button is your autofocus point selector. When you push this button, you will get a red icon lighting up in your viewfinder on any of those 9 autofocus points. Once you use your primary selector, you can designate which of those focus points you would like to use as your focus selector. And I'll be going over this a little bit more later. The one to the left of that is your exposure lock button, or your flash exposure lock button if you are using a flash. I have a whole lesson on this video specifically for this, and it's going to take some time to explain. Just know that that's what it's for. If you look below these two buttons, you'll see the plus magnifying glass and the minus magnifying glass. This allows you to zoom in and out of an image when you are in playback mode. So that's an overview of the camera. We've gone over all the buttons and we've briefly reviewed what they do. I promise you that if you practice, the day will come you will feel you have complete control over your camera, and it feels really good to know how to do everything. There's going to come a time when you may forget which button does what. You can just come back here and look at this menu, and I'll walk you through it again. And we'll go through each of these settings individually so you'll know when to use them and what they do. If you found this video helpful, you may be interested in my new DVD, Canon Rebel XSI Crash Course. It contains over 3 hours of lessons, which will get you on the fast track to taking great images. It can be ordered directly from my blog, which also features my latest images, free photography tips, and gear reviews at www.michaelthemaven.com.